Hello, welcome to Owl's Airgun. Hey, I'm making this video impromptu, not at the studio, don't have a lot of my normal stuff. So I will insert a picture of the airgun that I'm talking about here. But I made a couple of videos recently about some BB gun pistols, the Gammo P27 and the Crossman MK45. And interestingly, I didn't get this comment on the Gammo, but on the Crossman, I got a couple of comments that really made me think, and that's why I'm publishing this video. I need your input on this. The videos revolved around just an unboxing and a quick look at the Crossman CO2 pistol, the BB pistol. And a couple of the comments I got, one of them was, I'm for firearm ownership. That being said, these toys should be against the law. They get kids shot all of the time. Okay. Another one said, hey, good looking sidearm, dig the color scheme, great video. Thank you very much for that. Then another one for that same video. This is unboxing and first look at the Crossman MK45 CO2 semi-auto video. The first comment on that one was, that will certainly get some kid unalived by the police. And I have thoughts on this, but I'm very curious about your thoughts. You know, sometimes comments are reflective of the sentiment overall, and sometimes comments, they're just the opinion of one or two. So I'm very curious for those of you watching this, what your sentiment is. And I'm also guessing that many people don't appreciate the current legality, and perhaps that's something that needs to change. Obviously, in the airgun industry, we have many pistols that look like firearms. Particularly true, to point fingers, at Umarex. They make the Mark IV, Ruger Mark IV, an absolute direct copy of the Mark IV 22 long rifle pistol. They make the Glock series of handguns, again, straight copies of those. Also do a number of copies of firearms. I've reviewed the Ruger and I didn't get the comments on it that I got on this Crossman, but you know, some of those are obviously identical to a firearm. My question is this, and I asked the question back of the person that made the response that they should be getting against the law because they're getting kids shot all of the time. And I had a couple of thoughts on that. One, I was curious about the data. And if anybody has insight to the data, I'd really like to know what it is. You say all of the time, that makes it sound like with a good bit of frequency. Now, when I see these guns, and like I said, the Umarex being direct copies that are almost indistinguishable from the firearm, you know, they're said to serve training purposes, more cost-effective training, promote familiarity with the firearm. And, you know, I believe that those are valid things, and those are a good reason for those air guns to exist. The Crossman has more of a passing resemblance than those guns certainly do. But when you talk about something happening, you know, I've looked at these guns and thought, wow, that could be mistaken for a firearm. And obviously, people that are up to ill intent could purchase one of those to use in robberies or things like that. And I think there was a case recently in Texas where someone was robbing all of the patrons of a diner. And at one point, someone that had a concealed carry permit drew their firearm and shot the guy. And only to find out when he picks up the robber's, quote, firearm, it was not a gun. It was a non-gun. Not a air gun, but a fake gun. And he was obviously very, very upset that he had shot and killed somebody that he thought had a firearm. He was in fear for his life and the safety of the other patrons. He fired his weapon, only to find out the guy didn't really have a gun. And I think sometimes people that have ill intent are doing that for two reasons. One, the availability. It's cheaper to purchase one of those than it is to illegally buy a firearm, which is the only chance a felon or criminal has to purchase a firearm. It's on the black market. They're not going to be able to buy one through legal purveyor because they won't pass the background checks. You know, felons in the U.S. are not allowed to purchase firearms, so they obtain them illegally, either through stealing them or through buying them on the black market, which, as I understand it, they pay considerably more to purchase them than you would at a normal gun store. So that would be one reason they would use non-guns in the commission of their crime. And also, I believe in some jurisdictions, if they are not using an actual firearm, the legal penalty, if caught during the commission of that crime, is not as substantial because it wasn't assault with a firearm, it wasn't armed robbery with a firearm. Now, I believe some jurisdictions make exceptions such that if it looks like a gun, that's still armed robbery, and the penalties are the same. But I think availability and cost and a potential difference in the punishment may be reasons that an adult criminal would use a non-gun to commit a crime. This is someone talking about kids. These toys should be against the law. Well, first of all, they're not toys. And in all of the jurisdictions that I'm aware of, you have to be 16 years old or older to purchase one of these. In that case, just like a gun, an adult needs to have purchased one and let it fall into the hands of a child who is then using it inappropriately. In the case of the Crossman product, the documentation, that I understand not everybody reads the documentation, not everybody follows instructions, speaks very clearly and repeatedly about not brandishing this, that it can be mistaken for a weapon. There may be criminal fines. Police may be reacting negatively, and you could find yourself suffering gunshots because of them mistaking it for a firearm. So, you know, one of the things is I see the airgun manufacturers selling them responsibly, trying to educate on that. And obviously, sometimes that falls on deaf ears. So my first thinking is nobody's selling an 8-year-old an air gun that looks like a gun. It's not like a kid purchasing a toy cap gun. So I didn't know if the commenters are aware of that. My other part where I'm curious is, how big an issue is this? How often are kids, not adults, committing felonies, but children being unalived, as one person puts it, because they're brandishing a BB gun and a law enforcement official shoots them? How frequently does that happen? My belief is that it's the exception, not the rule, that it's probably rather infrequent. I've lived in a number of states. I consider myself fairly aware, trying to stay abreast of the news and civic issues, that kind of deal. And I haven't heard about this occurring a lot, certainly not all the time. And I'm curious, does anybody have any data? Am I ignorant? Am I living in bliss here? Is that happening much more than I know and for some reason being swept under the rug? Another thing that I don't know that a lot of people are aware of that I've always had a problem with, had heartburn with, it's my understanding legally that airgun manufacturers or anyone who purchases an airgun are not allowed to paint the muzzle orange. If I buy an airsoft gun, the law says it has to have an orange muzzle. If I buy toy guns, the law says they have to have orange muzzles to help prevent them being mistaken for firearms. If I buy an air gun, the manufacturer is legally prohibited from putting an orange muzzle on it. And if I paint the muzzle orange to denote that it's not a firearm, I've committed a crime as well. So my thinking is, if this is something that happens a lot, perhaps we need to talk to our congresspeople, to our legislators, and see about getting that legislation changed so that these guns could have orange muzzles, red muzzles, whatever, to denote that they're not firearms. If this is hysteria, and I certainly see the potential for it happening, like I say, the Ruger or some of these Glock copies are indistinguishable. Sometimes even the weight and the feel is so darn close that you really have to look to tell it's not a firearm. I don't think that those manufacturers are making extra money and exploiting the law to sell these as lookalikes. So yeah, I have some heartburn with this situation. First, I question the data, so I'd like to be educated. If it's true that this is happening more often than I'm aware of, I'd like to be informed of that. So if somebody has some data, please share it. My belief is, and perhaps it's ignorance on my part, that this is a very unfortunate, once in a while occurrence. And I would believe at that point there's probably some negligence on the part of an adult that let a child that was not trained, had not been taught proper behavior as is clearly spelled out in these manuals, and that child somehow got a hold of this and brandished it, pointed at a police officer or something in a scenario where the child lost his life. And certainly no law enforcement official wants to take anybody's life. They certainly don't want to take anybody's life in error, and then even more so, not the life of a child. So I'm curious, if anybody knows, please share. How big an issue is this? Is this hysteria on the part of one or two people? Is this something that happens infrequently? And if it's something that's happening with any kind of frequency, I think that we really need to look at the laws regarding this, because, it's funny, I reviewed the GEM CO2 pistol it's been a couple of months ago now. And, GEM quite clearly says when I fire airsoft BBs out of that gun and put the airsoft barrel on, it has a permanently affixed red muzzle cap to show, and that's compliant with the law, to show it is not a firearm. If I put the BB gun cap on and fire BBs, it's legally prohibited from looking the same way. So it could look like a Saturday night special to someone. So very curious, is this a topic we need to be addressing as a society and as an airgunning industry, or is it hysteria? If anybody has any information and any data, I'd really like to see it. I'm also very interested in general feelings and feedback. I'm hoping I'm not going to be inundated with, a lot of reactionary stuff that has no basis in fact. Let's try and have an intelligent conversation about this. And if it's something that really requires attention, maybe we need to get together and do something about that as a user group and as an industry. And certainly, I think as adults, we need to be very aware of how children are using air guns. That's part of our obligation, to make sure that they're used safely. And if a child is not responsible and does not have the maturity to handle it, we should not be giving them access to them. And these are intended to be used with adult supervision. So yeah, it's a topic, it's a conversation. I think we need to have it. If you could weigh in with your thoughts, let's please keep it intelligent and respectful. But I'd be very appreciative. And if there's anybody in the industry that listens to this video from Crossman, Umarex, or any of the manufacturers, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on it too. Perhaps this is something we need to talk about. Hey, thanks a lot for tuning in. I certainly appreciate it. If you're not a subscriber, I'd love to have you subscribe. Maybe give the video a thumbs up. And perhaps consider becoming a member. We'd love to have you. Hey, thanks a lot for tuning in, and I will see you on the next one.